Welcome to Being at Home with George. And of course, just reminding folks I'm George Mumford. And the why of the program is to open to the possibility of holding both the hurt and the hope. And in this week's session, I'd like to expand the topic beyond COVID-19 and to include what's going on in the world right now, especially with the death of George Floyd. Just the idea of the call. I want to answer the call to justice. And that begins with the call for love and the call for radical inclusion. And so when I think about this idea of how do we manage, and we've been talking about being at home with George, and of course, being at home is where the heart is. And it's about the heart. It's about feeling what we need to feel, and the hurt, the injustice, the pain, whatever it is, and at the same time generating the hope and being. Last week I talked about going from doing to being, and being loving, because I feel that for me what's really important is communicating with heart and communicating from the heart. So that talks about, at the end of the day, that's love. And also the idea about love has no color. Love does not discriminate. It's more inclusive. It covers all. And if we're going to love each other and love ourselves, we have to understand each other and understand ourselves. And for me, it's really, when I think about love has no color, or communicating masterpiece to masterpiece, communicating soul to soul, it's about seeing the divine, the divinity in each other. And it doesn't mean that when we're looking at people who are misbehaving or maybe not treating us properly or really devoted to injustice or whatever the motives are, we have to be able to say no to the behavior and at the same time say yes to how are we going to fix this. And when people ask the question how, I'm reminded that the how is yes. Yes, we can do this. We're going to do this. And we have to have some space, some time to reflect and really think about how do I relate to myself and others in a way where I'm actually living in the love. I'm being firm. I can mean what I say without being mean when I say it. And we can say we want justice. And that begins with love. That begins with trying to understand what's going on. But in the interim, before we understand, we have to say no to the behavior. And we have to talk about how are we going to make this moment, which I feel like we're at a moment where we've gone beyond the illusion of separateness, like I talked about last week. And that's happened before 9/11, marathon bombing, even in this situation here, especially. I spent a lot of time in Minneapolis, and what I've been seeing, that's the Minneapolis that I remember, is people coming together, being loving, supporting each other, giving each other water, food, and having a sacred space for people to be. And so I feel like there's a lot here for us beyond the COVID-19. And, that's a virus. And I believe that fear is a virus. I also believe that hate is a virus. And so how do we manage when we deal with a virus? We deal with a virus by acknowledging what it is and understanding how to prevent its spread. So we've been, social distancing, wearing masks and gloves, using sanitizer. So maybe when we start talking about the heart, it's the same thing as how do we sanitize the heart when we have it full of hate or fear. And we have to have a way of reflecting and noticing that that's the hurt that we've been talking about, and how do we generate the hope? So how do we channel that anger, that frustration, and channel it in a way where we can create more harmony, more peace, more ease. And at the same time, it's challenging because, especially if we're at one of these demonstrations or protests, when you have people in front of you, to see the love in that person, in spite of, even though that person may be a threat, at the same time, we have to connect with them, connect with ourselves. And I've seen young ladies stand in front of a storefront window because she was trying to prevent a looting, that we all have to step up to the plate in that instance and say, no, this is not what we're here for, and we need to focus on why we're here. And I believe that's been happening more and more. And it begins with this idea that I said, like, love can be a virus, but a positive virus where love has no color. It just has a way of openness, of being one, going beyond the illusion of separateness. So we have to figure out, how do we stay connected to this idea of being more inclusive, radically inclusive, like everybody. And you can see in the demonstrations, all colors, shapes, ages, nationalities, even because we had Australians there doing the reporting, as well as ages. Doesn't matter. And like I said, a friend of mine has an organization called Love Has No Color. Been operating for over 10 years on the Indian reservation, just with that, is bringing love, bringing compassion, bringing, whether it means just having a shoulder cry on, or listening to someone's suffering, or even just bringing food or whatever. It's about being a brother's keeper, or understanding I and the other are one. And if one person is suffering or being mistreated, we're all being mistreated. So it's really more about just living in the love and letting the love speak. That means reflecting from the heart, communicating from the heart, being real, and communicating with heart, which means with love to me. That's what that means. So watching George Floyd being murdered, lynched, I don't know what language you want to use, but seeing the light being pushed out of him, watching that and not being able to prevent it or having an impact on it, I know I felt a sense of powerlessness. And I'm pretty sure that as a nation, when you think about the last 400 years and me being a person of color, African-American man, there's been a lot of times where you feel powerless when someone has power over you, and if you react to it, that you could be putting your life in danger. So that's one way of looking at powerlessness. But I think as human beings, and not minimizing what it means to be a person of color, and the stress, and whether or not we live in fear or love, knowing that I heard a young lady speaking the other day talking about, this is fine if we prosecute and we get justice for this murder, but we want to transform the environment so that there's a feeling of safety and a feeling that we can be ourselves and we won't get picked upon because we look different, or we're a different sex, or even have a different philosophy. And so I think as human beings, two of the things we deal with consistently is this feeling powerlessness, feeling powerless, and feeling disconnected or feeling alienated. And so those are two things that you can be in a crowd and still feel alone. People can really revere you or give you compliments, but you may still feel powerless. And so this idea of powerlessness, and for me, when I think about my substance abuse experience coming up on 36 years clean, I had to admit to being powerless over my life before I could have access to power. So a big part of it is surrendering and saying, I can't, but I can connect to higher power. And for some of us, that could be God, it could be the Buddha, it could be Christ consciousness, Kuan Yin energy, the Tao, whatever it is, but connecting to something greater than ourselves. And so one way I look at that is love. And so love for ourselves and also love for others, but connecting to that, the energy of love, the power of love. And so, and then recognizing my powerlessness, that I of myself can do nothing, but when I communicate from the heart, when I look at others as being divine sparks or divinity or soul of soul or masterpiece to masterpiece, then I'm able to see the whole person, the body, the mind, the heart, and the soul, and not relate to them as a thing. And so that's when I feel powerless, is just realizing that I can connect to others, that being in relationship, love, being in love, whether it's love for myself or others, but always communicating from the heart and connecting on the heart level, soul to soul. that makes a lot of sense. And of course, me growing up Southern Baptist, it's the greatest commandment, which really talks about love God with all your mind, heart, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, that the last part of that could be the problem, because we're not doing that. We have to love ourselves before we can love our neighbors. And at the same time, if we understand that there's a power greater than ourselves, and even if we look at that power, I heard Dr. Maya Angelou on Super Soul Sunday repeat that I saw. She calls God all. Or so we just understand that love encompasses all, and we can bring all to what we do. And so how do we deal with powerlessness? By acknowledging we are powerless. And when we acknowledge that, we have access to power, because we get out of our way, we get out of that fear and get into the love and the growth mode and understanding, just connecting with others. And so for some of us, that means when we have self-pity and we're worried about ourselves, all we have to do is go and help somebody, be a service. And that's what I like to call forget yourself to find yourself. But you see people here moving forward and helping others and forgetting about yourself for a minute and seeing how we can bring harmony, peace, ease, not divisiveness, not hate, but love. So how do we keep this going? So for myself, this has been a 36-year journey, coming up on 36 years. And I feel like I'm just getting started. And how I keep it going, how we can keep it going, is by going inside, reflecting inside. And like I said, inside out, just feeling my heart, being in my heart, living in the love, and asking questions like, how can I be myself? Who am I? But even if I don't know who I am, if I can live the opposite of greed, which is, generosity, compassion. If I can align with the spiritual, align with divinity, love is really easy. It's challenging but easy, but love is a divine quality, as well as generosity, compassion, kindness, love. So it's really, how do we keep it going? By being loving, and how do I get love? By being loving. So being love. So when I see people, relate to them in a loving way. So when I go to the places that I go to, whether it's the CVS or Whole Foods or the hardware store, when I go in there, my job is to be loving and to greet them soul to soul or heart to heart, and just being loving. And that doesn't mean you're loving somebody who's trying to smack you. I'm not saying that, but I'm also saying that being loving means to protect myself and put my hand up or move my face and try to communicate how to resolve that conflict. But I think if we go in with the idea of how do we do this, we do it by saying yes to it. Let's just go in there with love, with the growth mindset that says, how do I seek to understand first and then to be understood? So there's principles here, and forgive myself, forgive others. So there's boilerplates out there, whether it's the Bible or the teachings of the Buddha or the Quran, or just psychology in general, in terms of understanding how to work, love, and play at our highest capacity. There's how to keep it going by being in the moment and seeing how we can serve, how we can be ourselves. But I'd say the short answer is just be yourself, and that's becoming. All I have to do is be myself. Just listen to my heart so that I can hold the hurt and generate the hope, and really have values to say, how can I be more loving? How can I have forgiveness? How can I learn from my mistakes? But at the same time, realizing that I have a masterpiece inside, that I am a masterpiece, and I'm relating to other masterpieces. Love has no color. Live in love. So the way we get beyond racism is to acknowledge that there's racism, or there's implicit bias, or that there's an illusion of separateness. And so if I relate to the other person, this is what you learn in kindergarten. You treat people the way you want to be treated. So if you want to be treated with respect, you have to be respectful. If you want to be treated with love, you have to be loving. And so whether the person, I've had a lot of experience with people who I knew were prejudiced and didn't really value me in a way I would like. I didn't let them define me. I don't let somebody else's behavior define me. I just would relate to them as a human being the way I wanted to be treated. And at some point they came around. And I wasn't trying to make them come around. I was just doing me. I was just being. When I talk about being, I was being loving, being present, and noticing when they say things or when something gets triggered inside and there's a part of me that wants to just tell them where to go or maybe do a little sign language with them. Uh, I still had a choice if I can create that space between stimulus and response. I can just choose my response and just say, let it go. You know, he's ignorant and just let it go. Don't get pulled in to that. But of course, when somebody's in your face or they're assaulting you, I'm not saying just turn the other cheek, although that's what they say in the Bible. I'd say duck, move your hand, and then protect yourself, whatever that means. And a lot of times that means just being loving and just saying no. Even if I were to parry somebody throwing a punch, say, please stop. Or just put them down and then say, you know, we don't have to do it this way. Just what's going on? Why are you, you know, try to get them to be in a space, because if they're in fear, then anything's possible. And it's probably going to be a bad consequence or not a helpful consequence. So first thing is to get them out of the fear mode and just to protect ourselves, but it's really understanding, just relating to the person in a way where you don't create this separateness, this illusion of separateness that, you know, we all have bias on some level or whatever. Some of us may not like oatmeal or grits or cream of wheat. And so that's kind of a bias. And it's when it's a thing, it's easier. But when it's a person or when we're projecting our fear onto somebody because we feel like they're taking something from us, or we have to feel better because we have to impose ourselves or have this entitlement to power, not wanting to share it, that we have to just look at. It's an inside job. What is it that causes me to relate to that person in an unskillful way or in a not loving way? And so if I say love, everybody deserves love. Everybody is worthy of love. It doesn't matter what color, what sex, what religious orientation you have, or sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. Just be loving. So for me, what's really helped me with this over these 36 years is I'm a student. I'm pursuing excellence and wisdom with grace and ease. So what does that mean? That means I seek to understand. I want to understand myself and understand other people so I can understand what causes me to be hateful, what causes me to be loving, what causes me to exclude experience. It's possible for me to view every experience with equal value. So just really being present, being loving, and seeking to understand, and living in the grace and the love, generating that. When I say generating the hope, that's generating love, generating compassion, understanding that I'm grateful that I'm not addicted to drugs. I don't have to do things I don't feel good about.